Hello everyone, welcome back to the ReQuest. It is I, Captain Logan, and also my wonderful co-host, Austin the Day Ghost. And tonight we are finally going to cover Extremis, and I say finally because it is kind of weird that I've never read this and never talked about this. I've heard about it forever. I knew it was a really important, seminal Iron Man story. I knew it was the main thing that Iron Man 3 was looking at. I knew about the importance of this even well before Iron Man 3. I've never been a big Iron Man guy. It never occurred to me to look at it. And Austin, I thought it was longer than it was. If I know this is just a 6-issue arc, I would have read it 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, that was the funniest part. I think at the end of last request, we were like, okay, we're doing Extremis. Well, is that like a 25 issue, like 12 issue run? Like, what is that? And I'm like, it's 6. It might even be 4. I can't remember.
Yeah, so you knew it was shorter.
Mm-hmm. No, I knew it was pretty short. I read this maybe a little bit before the movie came out.
What I wish, and I guess I'm going to kind of give away some thoughts and feelings right away, but what I wish somebody had told me about this, you know, big Iron Man fans like you, Austin, I'm not blaming you for the fact that I never read this, but what I wish somebody had told me was not only is this kind of weirdly an update, like almost a new origin for Iron Man. Like it keeps the original origin, maybe it retools it a little bit with the flashback in issue 5. I don't know. We'll talk about that because I haven't read the Iron Man origin in years. But it's kind of like a new origin on top of it, like in calling back to that and taking Iron Man in a new direction. It's very rebooty. It kind of feels like, in a weird way, almost like what John Byrne did with Superman or something, where it's like, let's kind of, except not like paving over anything like that did, because that was, post-crisis. But anyway, it does all of that, but it also is the best thing I've read to make me understand who this character is versus MCU Tony Stark, which is so odd and ironic. You made this point earlier today, and when we were talking about this, and I was thinking about it too. It's so ironic because this book has so much to do with the way MCU Spider-Man happens in the first place. Like the story, or sorry, what did I say?
Spider-Man.
Iron Man. The story influences, of course, Iron Man 3. That's the starting point for that. But the take, just the overall more realistic kind of real world take, is where Favreau is starting Iron Man for. So you have this story to thank for the MCU in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even just little things like when we recreate the origin, he's got like flamethrowers in his gloves, and that's what the movie does. Like maybe that's another update somewhere that I just haven't read, but that's the first time I've seen that in comics.
That's the main way that this influenced the MCU, is that he's got flamethrowers in his gloves now.
Yeah.
But I mean, even just the overall tone of it.
No, I know. I just mean like it influenced the origin a lot, especially with the first one, and then obviously design-wise, with the Iron Man armor.
But I read this and I felt like, oh, this is required reading. Like straight up. It's a really good comic story all on its own, and it's kind of a decent introduction even to like the medium of comics. I feel like this would probably be because it's so cinematic, and because the structure is so movie-like, it would be a really easy way to get people just into comic books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this art style in general is probably easy for somebody jumping in, because it's not cartoony at all. It's a very realistic style.
Yeah, well, and it's, I watched an interview today from a couple years after this came out with the artist, and he talks about how painted artwork wasn't super accepted for interiors until he came along with this book. And there were exceptions. There was some of that. You had I'm sorry, my head's not in the comic place right now. We've been doing so many other things lately. But you had people like the guy who did Marvels. Why can't I think of his name right now?
Oh, Alex Ross.
Alex Ross and stuff like that. But more with covers than interiors. It was a real special event to get fully painted artwork for interiors. And then right around this time and after this, it started to get more and more commonplace.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I imagine it's probably something like, you know, we just didn't do that, so there's just the people kind of holding on to, what things are supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, well, and people wanted, by and large, comics to be more of an escape and to be more heightened. And even when they felt super realistic, they didn't want the artwork to be that way, you know. So we weren't looking for hyper realism in faces.
Hmm. I remember, because I think this is like, if not the first book that I read that was like this, at least one of the first. And I remember like the art really left an impression on me. As I think I was probably like 14 when I read this, and especially like the shots of like people throwing up blood, like it's so just kind of visceral.
Yeah, and I was even kind of taken aback and surprised by a few of those panels, even now, like 16, 17 years later.
Hmm.
Even though I see this kind of thing a lot more often. I think some of it is just because it's nigh photorealistic.
Hmm. Well, it's just good body horror.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like I can imagine like an Iron Man movie, uh, doing this kind of body horror take, kind of like what Fant Four Stick was trying to do, but good. That kind of looks like this. It's taking cues from that.
I honestly had to remind myself in a few places that I was even reading a comic book. It was like a little bit funky that this was in this form, and that's not to knock it in the way it uses the medium, because I think it uses the medium to full effect. But I mean, it's just interesting how that is still translating this many years later when I've seen things influenced by this, and it's. Would you agree? I mean, it's a little pioneering.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
It's like the first thing to ever attempt realism in comics, but it's kind of going another notch further in popularizing it, certainly. And I felt like I said, I had to kind of keep reminding myself I was looking at a comic book. It felt like it would have been perfect to straight up adapt to a movie right then. You would have had to make sure and make it 6 seconds after this came out with the way technology was changing. And we'll talk about that. Because even by the time Iron Man 1 comes out, there's stuff in this book that feels very quaint technology-wise.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't even have that with two. Like, it's mainly just in the first one. I
What do
feel
you
like
mean?
by the like with the technology stuff in that first movie.
Oh, no, I just mean with this, I just mean in 2008, this comes out and it's making that big of a
Oh,
deal
I see
out of
what
the
you mean.
cell
Yeah.
phone. It's already quaint and outdated.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about Iron Man 1 being quaint and outdated. I'm
Sorry, I thought
saying
you
that
meant
if
this
you
ain't
adapt
that.
this movie in 2006, it feels right on the cusp, and it's very much about how the world is changing and what progress is, and if the future is coming too fast, or what we even want that to look like. And you could adapt this straight exactly as it is, but if you wait 2 years, it's already massively outdated.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest laughs I got out of the book. Is Tony Stark is like, oh, this like phone, like we have this, it changes the game, and he's holding it up, and it's like a 2008
Yeah,
BlackBerry.
we'll get to that because we'll start
But
showing art here in just a
yeah.
little bit. But anyway, this one was requested by Elliot Slater on Patreon. So thanks a ton to you finally getting me to look at this. And of course, Austin's familiar with this. When was the last time you read this?
uh, that I only read it that one time, so like 2013,
Oh, okay.
maybe 2012.
Sorry, maybe you said that and I missed it.
Yeah, it was like right. I think it was right before the third movie.
Somebody a long, long time ago, when I still had a P.O. box, sent me. I'm pretty sure that's how I got this, unless I got it from Eric at one point. I can't remember. But I got the motion comic, and I went ahead and watched that today as well. And I actually recommend that version of it too. It's not a bad way to get this if you can find it. Like even just watching that without reading it, you get the bulk of the story. There's a couple of scenes that are cut here and there for the sake of time, I think. But the voice acting is really good. It's kind of nice that you don't have somebody trying to do like a Downey sound-alike.
I was going to say it's probably early enough.
It's not though. It came out in 10, so it could have done that. That's what I'm saying. So I really appreciated they didn't go that way with it, and it is a motion comic, so it's word for word the panels, even though there's some stuff cut out, and they don't change anything. So you still have the outdated kind of BlackBerry looking phone and all that stuff. But like the music in it is quite good, and I will say the theme that opens each episode, because they do it issue for issue. Like each episode is an issue, and the theme that plays at the beginning of that is a little bit like the movie theme. But it fits it really well, and I was impressed with the way the art was translated to animation. It kind of works, and the artist seemed really pleased with it too. And that's where that interview I watched was, by the way. This has special features, believe it or not.
Crazy.
Yeah, he's got a 16-minute interview with that guy on here.
You can't get special features in like most new MCU movies, but they got it on that.
They got it on that. Well, that was back when we were a lot more special feature happy too. I mean, this is 2 years before streaming becomes all the rage. But yeah, what is his name? Addy Granov. And I got a lot out of that interview. I'm glad that I watched that. But anyway, so yeah, if you happen to, just a little mini review of that, if you happen to be able to get your hands on this, that was, usually I read comics twice, and that was the way I looked at this a second time. I read it down once, and then I watched that.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
Which was a much better experience than when we did Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, because they had it on Marvel Unlimited as just the director's cut, so I was reading through that, and I didn't read through all the like bonus stuff at the end.
I didn't either. I skimmed bits of it, but that's how I read it too, and that's actually what you're looking at on the screen here. That it's cut off a little bit at the bottom, but director's cut. The 5th issue has a whole couple of page discussion about this, even because that's
what I was about to say. Is they mentioned that in there, yeah,
because it came out at the same time, so they were making a big deal out of Extremis, and I think they had just put it back out in trade again.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that's probably when they put out the trade that was like the blacked out background and just the movie mask.
Oh, really?
Maybe, I don't know. Unless they put that out for 3.
That pose of him doing like the superhero landing, I think is, and Granov talks about this in that interview, but I think that's the image that was on the magazine cover that's in the movie, like toward the beginning. Was it Time or something else? But they have a magazine cover that they show with that big speech that what's his name? The bad guy in that movie has
Whiplash.
No, Iron Man 1.
Oh, and Iron Man 1, sorry. Stan.
With Stan, yeah. But don't you remember they show some magazine covers, and there's one that's just, I think it's just this pose that they just drew for that.
But he doesn't have the Iron Man armor yet. That's why I assumed you were talking about 2.
Okay. No, that's true. I'm conflating things. I guess it must have been in 2.
That's also, I'm pretty sure, the pose he lands in Iron Man 2 when he lands at the convention.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay. It's weird because he was talking about the movie, and now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, like obviously he wasn't Iron Man yet, so I don't know. I was just going off of what he was saying, and my brain was conflating the 2 scenes, I guess. But anyway. Hey, we have some super chats. Let me read these real quick, and then we'll get a synopsis from Austin. Nicholas Bodo, before I get to super chat, says, hey, guys, wasn't this adapted for Iron Man 3? Yes, kind of loosely. I mean, we took Extremis, and we sort of split it up. So Iron Man in this... Tony Stark does the same thing he does in Iron Man 3, where he can mentally bring his armor to him, but that's separate from Extremis in the movie. And in this, he does it because of Extremis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got the same chip in his arm too. In Iron Man 3.
And then of course they went in the Mandarin in their kind of twisty way, who is not at all a part of this story, of course.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not
if you
like X-Men 3 where they take two totally unrelated stories and blend them, because they're not really adapting any particular Mandarin thing, as
Mhm.
far as I know. But I'm
Yeah.
not a big enough Iron Man guy to really know if there's anything they're looking at with him.
No, I feel like no matter what, if you're adapting this, that's probably the first thing you change, right? Is you like kind of beef up the antagonist side a little bit more.
Just because it's a big budget movie, I wish they didn't have to. I like how small it is in this.
Hmm. Well, I just mean
I like the
like,
personal stakes of it.
yeah. But I just mean like you'd probably put like a more recognizable comic book villain
Oh, I
in
see what
that
you're saying.
place.
Yeah, because there are big high flying fights in this, which I was surprised by with this kind of art, and given how sorry, I'll get to super chats. Given how wordy it is,
Hmm.
or I'm sorry, I should say dialogue driven. It's not a horribly wordy book, but it is very dialogue driven. Like when I said it was hard to remember that I was looking at a comic book. It wasn't just that it felt like watching a movie. There's some kind of novel writing here, like really
Hmm.
here too. Really, really good novel writing. This easily also could have been a book.
Hmm. No, I think that's kind of one of the things that at least the first movie captures with in terms of the actual action, is that there's not a ton of action, but like what is there is very memorable, and it kind of
Yeah.
stands out a little bit more.
And it does the same thing this book does too, where until you get to the Stain fight, I don't know why I couldn't think of his name earlier. When you get to the Ironmonger fight in the third act, with the silly one-liners and the "you've upgraded your armor," but other than that, it does the same thing. The movie does the same thing this does, where it's pretty quiet in the fights.
Hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
Like the fights in this, again, really cinematic. It reads like movie storyboards. You're just shooting through them. Like this is a fast read once you get past the first issue, which is 10 pages longer than a standard issue. And in that thing I watched, Granov talks about how that wasn't even a thing they planned to do. We do that a lot now, where it's like, here's a beefier first issue, and then here's the rest of it. He said that Ellis just wrote 10 pages too many, so he was forced to draw that many. And it ended up being kind of a good thing for it, I guess, just because it ended up being such an event ultimately. But more later in trade. Like, it wasn't as big of a deal until it was all finished, because fans were complaining. People like the art a lot, but people were complaining that there wasn't enough action in it because they didn't get the movie structure of it. And I'm wondering, and I don't want to act like this is such a important big deal comic that everything it did for the first time, but I wonder if we have Extremis partly to blame for how popular the 6-issue comic story arc became after this.
Well, okay, remind me, when does this come out again? 'Cause this is
Oh,
like
5?
oh, 5? Okay, so it's like it's definitely a part of it.
We're
I've always
definitely
just
doing
blamed.
things in arcs like that, but the idea that you'd have that 6-issue structure where it's kind of structured like a movie, although it doesn't do what a lot of things insist on doing now and did back then, right? Where you have to open with a big splash page of the hero and then drop back in time, and you got to make sure that he has enough like costume face time in every issue. This didn't do that, and that kind of put some people off.
Hmm. Yeah, and I always blame Ultimate Spider-Man for that, but this is definitely part of it.
But that's weird because there are like Ultimate Spider-Man goes back and forth with it. Like sometimes it'll have several issues and you can't even tell where the break is.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. I think it's just because as a kid, like I always read just like the specific like like the first arc or like the third arc or like always the ones that were like the 6-issue ones.
Yeah.
So that's more of what I'm familiar with Ultimate Spider-Man, and then there's stuff in the middle that kind of bleeds out of my mind.
So yeah, maybe we actually should praise this more than condemn it for the 6-issue arc thing, because that was probably already becoming a little bit more popular. It was all the rage by the time I was regularly reading new, but I didn't start buying new comics on the regular until like '09 into 2010. So I didn't know exactly when that. And obviously, I've read stuff in the mid 2000s, but spottily, right? So maybe it's more that we have it not to blame, but to thank for the fact that some of those 6-issue arcs are more naturally written for trade. Because that's absolutely what this is doing.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it works really well here.
I do too.
But I also imagine that it was probably annoying reading it month to month.
Yeah, this is one of those things that probably should have just been a graphic novel and come out that way. And I'm glad that, more things are doing that now. But, like, a lot of, but still not enough, right? Like, not to go on a side tangent, but like a lot of people have requested a number of DC Black Label things for Austin and I to talk about, and none of that stuff seems like things that should come out month to month. It always seems like you should have had all of it at the same time, even like the 12-issue ones. It's like, nah, just buy it in hardcover and don't make me wait on these.
Just Earth won it. Come on now, DC.
Yeah, and this is coming from somebody that loves collecting singles. But if you're going to write for trade, put it out in trade.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always read in trade. I own like maybe 20 single issues, so that's just always how I've read things.
See, what they should do is, for those of us that love singles, this would be a really terrible idea, by the way. I'm not actually suggesting this, but I was going to say what they should do is instead of still having month-to-month comics that you go out every week and get at the comic shop. Not to disparage comic shops, but what would be great for people like me is you want to read all of it at once, but you want to collect the covers, right? So you have trades, people want to buy them that way, and then you just have like a slipcover thing that has all the individual issues that you could buy all at the same time, and they all come out at once. Some of us would buy it that way, and you can have a really cool like cover for those with sleeves in the back that have all the individual issues. Wouldn't that be great?
Sure, why not?
Isn't that a fantastic idea? Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. On his old channel, Eric had a video recommending comics to non-comic readers. This was one of them. Hellboy was another. Yeah, and again, it's weird that I never read it because, he talked about this book all the time when he and I were hanging out regularly.
Yeah. No, Eric was a big part of why I started reading Iron Man and Hellboy in high school.
Yeah. And he's mentioned a lot of other Ellis things to me, like Transmetropolitan, that I've just never looked at, but I'm still curious about. And I think was that not the book that the Matrix directors were kind of blamed for ripping off on top of Ghost in the Shell? I think it was that book. Maybe
that sounds familiar.
Maybe it was something else. I thought it was that book.
Yeah, it sounds familiar,
but
maybe.
It's been too long since I've thought about that, or since he and I have talked about that. Teddy, $9.99 super chat. I miss special features. Thanks again, Teddy, for the support. Like, I would buy an Ant-Man 3 DVD or Blu-ray if there was a special feature interview about what the hell they were smoking when they designed MODOK.
What were they smoking? Cigarettes? Yeah, no, I agree. Even, like, I miss the old... when they would do the little documentaries about the history of characters, I feel like Iron Man was one of the last ones that got that on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, because that was the beginning of the MCU, but it was still kind of the tail end, at least the way it was treated with that release and everything, of the, earlier Marvel Studios movies that all had those. Mm-hmm. Or at least a lot of them did. I don't know if Elektra did, but Daredevil did. Did Elektra get a feature about comic book Elektra? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I've seen that movie once, and it was for Marvel Mania.
Yeah. Well, and, like, that's not a good movie or anything, but the nice thing about even the crappy movies during that period was it was always worth buying the discs if you were a fan of those characters, because you always got a really good documentary about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Daredevil had one of the best ones. Ghost Rider had one, I think.
Yes, I don't think I watched that one. I remember watching the Spider-Man and Iron Man ones a lot, and I still need to see the Daredevil one because I always hear that's the best one.
Oh, Iron Shell and Bob the Hun say it's actually the Invisibles that people
Oh, okay.
by Grant Morrison that people complain about the Matrix creators ripping off. Okay. I've never read
I wasn't
Transmet,
too
so I don't
sure.
really know what's in that. I don't know if that has shades of cyberpunk at all. This does, which was one of kind of the big departures from Iron Man before it. Apparently, is that it's a lot more kind of like a harder science fiction in its way.
Hmm. Yeah, and he carries that over
A
into
little
his
bit.
Bond work, which was I thought was interesting. His first arc in that has people with like robotic limbs and stuff.
Oh,
So I think
cool.
that's just something that Ellis really likes.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe this is like techno-thriller.
Hmm.
Thomas Lowe says you didn't review this book with Eric before, Cap. You know what? I don't remember doing that, but it's always possible. I didn't think I'd ever read this.
Yeah, I don't remember you guys doing a video,
Watch
but
it.
he also just means like why did like I mean like I'm just surprised you didn't maybe.
Well, that's not what he said. He says like I thought the question mark at the end of that meant wait. I thought you did, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Uh, no, I don't know. I don't know why that never happened. But if it did, I don't know why I'm not remembering it because I mean, it's quite good, and like I said, it's required reading in lots of different ways. Senior Sticks $2 super chat. Could Extremis cure cancer and other fatal diseases? The Maya character kind of claims that if she has enough time with it, it would. That's actually in the book, and is kind of the argument for, spoiler alert, the more than morally ambiguous, I guess morally bereft thing that it turns out she's been doing all along.
Hmm.
Is that she wants to do the same thing Iron Man or Tony Stark is doing with the Iron Man suit, where he's developing and other technologies too, where he develops things that can be used as weapons for the greater good and for their other applications. And so she thinks that using a we'll spoil everything, but she thinks that using a terrorist to test Extremis up against something like Iron Man is justification, or that's justified because of the other applications that she hopes to use it for down the road, including curing diseases and things.
Hmm. Yeah, which is interesting. I didn't really think about it until just the second while you were describing that. That I guess that's like the big pin they pulled out of this for the movie. I guess is the whole like using a terrorist thing.
Uh, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, because that's like the whole thing in Iron Man 3 is they like make obviously like it's not exactly the same because it's they make up a
Yeah,
terrorist
they make up a
versus
terrorist. I didn't know what you meant by pulling a pin out of.
oh yeah, that was weird wording.
I didn't know what that meant
I'm
because like
Canadian. Give me a break.
no, it's cool. It's just there are a number of things they pull out of this book, so I didn't know what you meant by that. I thought you meant the
I just
one.
meant like that's just like a big thing. That,
Okay,
like the
I thought
movie
you meant what they
does.
left out was
Oh
they
no, no, no.
didn't use a terrorist. They pretended like they did. That's what I was confused about. Sorry.
No, sorry, just bad wording.
um, I don't know if this book will make me like Iron Man 3 less on multiple viewings. There were things, it would be a totally different movie, and the movie they made a lot of sense for the Tony Stark they have in that universe, who is a different character in a lot of ways than he is in the comics. And again, it's very ironic to me that I felt like I understood comic book Tony Stark a lot better reading this, and it's the book that gives you MCU Tony Stark, but they infuse so much of comic book Doctor Strange in him, in his narcissism and his self-obsession and all of that. And that's kind of how I was introduced to him. I didn't really look at Iron Man that much growing up, so to me, that's who that character is. And that's why Doctor Strange was weird, because it was kind of a double beat. And in the movies, and then I get to this, and I'm like, okay, he was never like perfectly altruistic or anything. There's a little bit of a ends justifies the means thing, and he also sometimes sounds like a mad scientist. Where he's like, I'm all about the future. I want to prove that we can improve ourselves, that we should do that. I mean, he's basically advocating for turning everybody into cyborgs. He's like,
Yeah.
we just have to worry about the technology falling in the wrong hands. I'm like, but you want to put that technology in everybody's hands if you want to if you want to improve all of humanity with your technology. It's weird that this is a starting place. Sorry, I'm jumping around. It's weird that this is a starting place, Austin, for a new era of Iron Man, because if this was a standalone story, and like it is, it's got a beginning, a middle, and end, but typically what you would think you'd do with a thing like this is that Tony Stark would pay for his hubris for even trying to use Extremis for something going horribly wrong with it at the end to him. Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing he gets to keep it at the end. That's not typically where you'd go with that plot.
No, we got more comics to sell, Cab. He's stagnated. We need a new thing for him to do.
Now, am I remembering the Fraction run, which is just a couple years after this, with Invincible Iron Man? Am I remembering this right, where very quickly he ramps it up even further than this, where it's like nanotechnology in his skin?
Yeah, because that's where you get the bleeding edge armor.
I mean, that's pretty quick to enhance it like that. It's like, guys, you're going to hit a ceiling at some point. There's nowhere to go.
Well, I feel like we kind of hit that then, yeah. But that does become a thing moving forward after this, which is that like every run has to introduce the next big suit.
Yeah. But like, are they always introducing new technologies to make it feel more and more futuristic?
I mean, as much as you can, I guess. There's
yeah. How much farther can you go? I mean, it starts to make it feel, even when you get stuff like that in the mid to late 2000s, it starts to feel really absurd then when you watch other sci-fi stuff that's set like 400 years in the future, and we're trying to think of, where technology would advance that far. It's like, nothing you can come up with is going to be something that we won't have figured out in like 15 years.
That's why the MCU killed Iron Man. They were like, okay, we hit the nanotech brick ceiling. There's nowhere to go. Can't kill him.
Yeah, I mean, I did appreciate that at the end of Iron Man 3, he doesn't have this exactly. Like, they don't go any farther for a very long time than, okay, he can control the armor coming to him. I don't even get the sense that he is bionically linked to it like he is here. I don't know, but is he actually? He's not really controlling it with his brain, because he's still talking to Jarvis, right? Or the AI after Jarvis even.
He's got like the thing in his wrists, but yeah, it's not like into his brain. I don't think we ever got there with Iron Man in the MCU.
That was probably for the best.
Mm-hmm. That's a big thing I have with this book, which is that I think it works here, but I also don't really like the Extremis thing moving forward in mainstream continuity.
Yeah. Let me read these other, and yeah, like on principle, typically on principle, I agree with you on that. I guess I said typically because I mean with a lot of other characters I have that, but I don't have enough experience with this character to condemn it for that. Mm-hmm. But I probably agree.
It's too much of a superpower at a certain point.
Yeah, it feels like the I'm Batman thing at some point. Mm-hmm. We're not even exactly I'm Batman, where it's like we're not explaining anything Iron Man gets away with, well, he's Iron Man, so don't question it. But it is that he's got tech that's just far beyond what makes it interesting. Like, at some point, he's just too powerful, and it starts to become the Superman juggling planets problem.
Yeah, because at a certain extent, like for me, like he becomes Colossus, except instead of just turning silver, he just turns into Iron Man, and I'm less interested in that.
Well, that was the other thing about Fraction I wanted to ask you, because I thought I remembered, because in this, he's got the exoskeleton in his skin by the end, where he can think exoskeleton and then it pops out, but then he starts to bring the suit to him, and then once you get the nanobots, I think it creates the whole armor.
Yeah, no, eventually we get to just the whole armor.
Only 3 years after this. maybe 5, because it's not the very beginning of his run, I don't think. I think it takes a while.
Yeah, I think it's because I've mostly read older Iron Man, so I haven't read Fraction yet, but I think it comes in later. Because I know, like, the early stuff is, like, the downgrading.
I started reading it in 2010 on Eric's recommendation, and
I'm excited to get there.
I want to say I like to read what I read again and then read past it. I want to say the very first issue I read of it as it came out was the issue that did that. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I just
okay.
jumped on at exactly the right time, I guess. It was a really good jumping on point. And I was like, okay,
I
I'll
mean,
start
unless I'm
reading
wrong, yeah.
reading
But I always
now. And
thought it was closer to the end.
I
But
thought it was 10 or 12 issues in. But guys, I'm going on 13-year old memory here, so
mhm. Yeah, most of my knowledge of the Fraction run comes from watching Eric's videos back in the day.
I used to read comics. I missed that. Senior Sticks, $2 super chat. Oh, sorry, we already read that one. Bob the Hun, $2 super chat. He says he would blame Bendis for the 6-issue comic problem. Austin was kind of saying that with Ultimate Spider-Man. I hear what you guys are saying, but Bendis also did a lot of like 10, 12, 15, 20 issues with no real break, and you can't really tell where the the next arc really begins. So like, yeah, he did some of those. Was he the first? Did he really popularize? I don't know.
Well, I just think too, because Ultimate Spider-Man does that a lot, and that's such like a huge breakout success. Like I think it's definitely part of
Well,
mainstreaming
and
that.
maybe it does it more often than I give it credit for. It's just what I'm remembering with what I've read of that book is more of the weird breaks in the trades, where it's like, I mean, the story's not really finished.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think there's like
But
some of the
maybe there's
middle
less
ones
of
have
that than
that.
I'm remembering. And again, that's been a little while too. His Daredevil is more that way.
Yeah, and I haven't read his Daredevil, but that's another one. One day.
Michael Skimbody is a name I don't recognize. Welcome. Thanks for the super chat. $1.99 says Batman Detective Dini or Batman and Son Morrison. Classic versus question, and we're going to try to keep it on topic for this review, so I'll answer that very quickly myself. But from what I've read of them, I've always preferred Dini's take, but Morrison's run is certainly more epic and planned out and stuff. So I mean, it's just kind of a taste issue. But that was a
Yeah.
nice period because there was something for, both big in its way, I guess, big kinds of Batman fans.
hmm Yeah, I'm not really sure because I also feel like Detective Dini is some of the weaker Dini stuff, at least from what I've read. Like I remember stuff like, and I know I'm in the minority,
I haven't
but
read enough of it. That's why I hesitate.
and I didn't care about stuff like Heart of Hush. So
Oh, and I thought that was awesome. So
yeah, and everybody does, and I read it years ago, and I was like, eh. So I don't know, but I guess I would go Dini overall. I don't know.
I'll also go the superficial route and say some of those detective covers are some of my favorite covers in Batman.
Oh yeah, no, there's some great covers in that.
All that pseudo black and white stuff, it's
Mhm.
killer.
Yeah, no, I guess that's something that both of them have is they both have really great artwork.
Anyway, okay, so knocked out those super chats. We're already 38 minutes in, and we've talked all around this. We'll start looking at art here. And Austin, why don't you just give us a real brief rundown? Again, we've talked about a lot of what happens in this, but maybe you can give us kind of an overview so we have a place to do a little bit more story discussion.
hmm Yeah, no, and it is a very simple story. So basically, um, there's an Extremis sample that's stolen by a terrorist, and Maya Hansen calls Tony Stark. She's the scientist that made it, and she wants Tony's help in finding it. Because, of course, as we all know, Tony's bodyguard is Iron Man. So it becomes a search for, I think his name's Malin, or it's Malin, right? Or
Malin,
Malice?
yeah.
Yeah, it's Malin.
Oh, before we get away from it, can I just say this real quick?
Yeah.
If you've not read this book, you see this guy? See this guy right here? This is the villain of Iron Man
Iron
3
Man
who
3.
commits suicide after 2 pages and is never seen again. That's what Iron Man 3 did with this character, made him the villain, the
Yeah.
Mandarin. It's nuts. I had no idea.
Thanks, Marvel Creative Committee. You done good.
No, I mean I like that character in that movie. I
Mhm.
don't have any problem adapting things like that, but isn't that crazy?
Well, it's just the reason why I say that is just because like it was written and they even hired Rebecca Hall to play Maya Hansen under the idea that she was the villain, and then the Marvel Creative Committee went, no one's gonna buy toys of some girl, so she can't be the main villain. So it was
Yeah,
changed
well,
to
eggs on
killing.
their face because they made the Eternals, which had 10 superheroes in costumes, and nobody bought any of those.
Well, it's always just made me laugh too, because who was buying toys of Aldrich Killian? Like, not that like he's a bad character or anything, but like I don't know,
No,
the guy in
but
a suit.
they did make toys of the Mandarin. I don't know if they sold, but that's probably what they were thinking. So then the question is, could you have taken uh, the Maya character and had her create the Mandarin
But I think that was the
through
idea.
that actor?
So you could have still had the Mandarin.
Are you sure? Because yeah, maybe it was. The way it plays now that I've read this to me is they had the they knew that this had a plot twist where where there was a character that you didn't think was the behind everything all along, and initially they were going to make it the same thing as this where it's Maya, and then when they decided not to, they went, okay, well, we'll make the twist, we have a fake Mandarin now.
No, I think it was just the same movie because it was far enough up to the point where like they were casting and stuff.
So that would have been like a double twist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I guess.
A twist within a twist, really.
Yeah.
Or maybe Guy Pearce would have just killed himself in the first two scenes. No. Maybe he did jump off.
That would have felt really anticlimactic if we open it with that flashback with the "I'm Blue Dabba Dee Dabba Da" song, which is weird because I just played that in a stream last night. And then the very next time you see him, he just commits suicide. Then he's gone.
Well, no, it would just he walks up to the roof and then he jumps off.
Oh.
And then it cuts to present day. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They could have done that.
If
I'd love to read that script.
way.
Anyway,
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your synopsis, and I'll try not to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. So Iron Man, he finds Malin, and he gets completely destroyed. And he's going to die from injuries that he has. So he goes back to Maya Hansen, and he himself like kind of muddles with the Extremis thing, so that he changes it from being like super strength and the ability to breathe fire and stuff, so that it instead makes him merge with his Iron Man suit.
Did you not feel like that technology was maybe a little bit too fluid and broad? Like, it kind of feels like it can do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's basically just upgrading your brain. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it makes some kind of sense, but it seems. But I don't know. Like, is that a fair criticism? Where like it seems like kind of too pliable.
One, because she mentions if she had 4 years, she could cure cancer. And Tony Stark can change, breathing fire to becoming Iron Man. Is there no just no cancer thing, in it? Like, I feel like it probably could cure cancer now.
Well, it healed his broken bones.
That's what I mean, because it completely resets you, and you go into an inhuman cocoon type thing.
By the way, I didn't even catch the panels where his bones were fixed in the still images, and was really glad I watched this because they make a big point of that. Like like in the motion comic, you see the muscles or the bones fuse back together, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that happened.
Oh, cool! That's awesome.
You should watch it. It's really quite good.
Mm-hmm. No, I have to track that down. It sounds great.
Yeah, I was hoping it was that somebody had posted it on YouTube or something, but it was only one part of it.
Mm-hmm. So Tony gets the Extremis armor while Malin is on his way to Washington, D.C. To take back America for the original colonizers that took America. And then Iron Man, he comes back and then he just kills Malin.
Yeah, he's kind of a typical far-right racist guy with a backstory I don't fully understand. Because it's kind of glossed over very quickly. And I think some of the politics of this might come off a little bit heavy-handed, although I like that on both sides of things. I just wanted to put a pin in this point real quick because I don't want to belabor it, but on kind of, because this is one of those like political books that people might assume I don't like because I don't want politics in my comics or whatever. There are places where I feel like Warren Ellis is kind of speaking through characters, and you can tell absolutely what his politics are. But for the most part, it is a good character-driven story that doesn't get too horribly bogged down by that stuff. But what I like about it is you do get characters of both extreme persuasions, and I feel like Extremis becomes something of a double entendre title in that way, where like this book doesn't like extremes, and it's trying to find a middle point with things, where Tony Stark is saying, I can't make progress happen. I can't improve myself and help the world improve unless I play within the system as it is, which means I have to make weapons that might hurt someone in order to make good things happen, which sucks and is awful and is a great ethical conundrum. I don't sometimes know if he's doing the right thing, but he's going up against people with far more extreme ideologies than that on a couple of different sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have extremist sides. Well, I think what helps in terms of like the kind of crazy.
The motion comic pronounces it Extremis all the way through, and it drove me crazy. I couldn't even.
Well, Extremis was all I heard up until Iron Man 3 came out, and then it seemed like everyone collectively agreed it was Extremis.
Well, here's the thing, though. And I don't mean to keep talking about this too much, but the artist interview, he's pronouncing it Extremis the whole way through. And I'm like, okay, so you have the artist that made the book around while you're making the movie, and you don't know how to pronounce it?
No, okay, that is true.
That's what's weird about it.
I was just thinking, like, I'm sure the creators probably meant for it to be Extremis, but, like, in terms of, hearing fans talk about it for years, all I heard was Extremis.
But they put him
But that's weird, yeah.
on the DVD. So they've got him around.
Maybe Warren Ellis thinks it's Extremis. This panel right here.
Yeah, maybe they
page,
can't decide between them, and it becomes like a Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul thing.
Yeah, exactly. This page right here is like directly in the first movie, where he picks up the car and then Iron Man unibeams him and then catches it.
Yeah. The action in this is fantastic.
No, it looks great.
I will complain that most issues end with a real clear, like a cliffhanger, and you gotta wait and find out what happens next issue, and then you get one or two issues like this that just end.
Well, this is the.
It's just weird not to get it to be continued on the bottom of this page, and it plays better in the motion comic because it's like, oh god, he's about to throw the car. Oh no, what's gonna happen? And then it cuts to credits, and I'm like, okay, that's great. At least I know the issue's over. And this, you turn the page, and you're like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, no, this cap is was it best of both worlds or whatever. It's the, oh man, he's gonna kill Iron Man, and then in the next page, Iron Man just shoots him.
Yeah, no, that's true. But if you're going to do that cliffhanger, you know what it should have done? If it didn't, and I don't know why you didn't, because every other issue I think did, but if you're not going to say to be continued at the bottom of the page, just give me a black panel. Just make it a 4-panel page, put black on the bottom. Because it's like you're cutting to black. It's very strange to not cut to anything.
No, that is really funny.
But yeah, I love the wordless action pages. Like, I love the contrast of, we've got a lot of really thoughtful, introspective dialogue cut up by just really exciting, screen-worthy action.
Well, I think it becomes, like, really cathartic by the last issue, where, like, it's so talky and, like, science fiction-y. And, in the last issue, it's like 60% just Iron Man finds Malin and just kicks his ass for like 60% of the issue, and there's like no dialogue through most of it. And when there is, it's like, haha, I'm better than you. I've upgraded. I've upgraded my armor.
Well, the other, it doesn't degenerate as bad as that does. But the one thing it does that I don't love is it kind of spells out the way that Malin is supposed to be a mirror for Tony Stark. And I guess part of the reason I don't like it is I don't think it works as well as I want it to, or that maybe Ellis thinks it does, where he's like, you're what, like Tony Stark breaks it down while he's fighting him, and you do that again kind of typical battle thing where they've got to be pointing out the ways they're the same and different in the scene while they're throwing punches, right? And I do like all the, look, don't make me kill you. Like I'm gonna have to. I don't want to kill you. I like all that stuff. But when he goes, you are what I was always afraid I could become. Like I killed 50 people in order to escape when I first put on the Iron Man suit because there was no other way out. I like how horrific this makes Tony Stark's original origin, where it's that idea that we've been talking about the whole issue. There's a good reason to put it in issue 5. We've been talking the whole time about how Iron Man, or how Tony Stark is conflicted about whether making weapons, while what he really wants to do is improve the world, is the right thing to do. He's having to do the wrong thing for, like, a not so great thing for the right reasons. And then that idea is encapsulated totally with the origin, where it's like his worst nightmare come to life, where he has to do that in order to escape. And then we make the villain, I think it's too forced in like trying to make the villain that whole idea, because after all, he didn't come up with Extremis. He's not an inventor. It's not his idea. He doesn't really, I mean, I guess he has a vision in the sense that he is a terrorist. But Tony Stark was never a terrorist. Like, it might have been better if it was, and maybe this would, it would rewrite the story too much, because I do like the twist with Maya. But in order to make that idea work, if that idea was important to Ellis, it probably ought to have been more of like a Man-Bat situation, where it's somebody who injects himself thinking he needs to be Iron Man like Tony Stark is Iron Man.
That, or you need like Rhodey Iron Man, where like it would parallel in that way, because Rhodey didn't create the armor. They're both using this technology somebody else made.
Yeah. So was that too forced of an idea to you too?
So Malin is, I think, like pretty underdeveloped. Like I like what's there well enough, but I think there just needs to be more with him. So
He's the weakest thing in it. I like where Maya's coming from a lot. When you get to the end and she's like, I'm not any different than you are, and the reader kind of has to decide if she has a point or not. That's all wonderful. It's like the reverse of Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I like Bane okay until I find out that he's just somebody's henchman, and then when you find out whose henchman he is, her motivation's not interesting at all. This is the absolute flip of that.
Yeah. But yeah, so Malin's like not especially developed. So when I got to that part where Iron Man's breaking down why they're the same, it just kind of came out of nowhere, I thought. Or at least like it was stuff that I wasn't picking up on because I didn't know enough about this guy.
Okay, I had a problem with this page.
Okay.
Because that is supposed to be a swastika.
Yeah.
And I have to zoom in that far before I can tell that is a swastika, and I had no idea what that was about, where she opens up her shirt, because this is the scene where Malin is talking to this girl that hates the system just like he does, but he realizes that they're coming from totally opposite places. And again, it's two different extremes. Ultimately, she gets murdered, which is awful, and I love the, like, in the way it's supposed to be. I love the panel shift with that, where like it just cuts to she's just dead, bleeding on the ground.
Yeah, he did like the Sub-Zero fatality where he ripped her head out.
Again, it's more effective here because of the way you cut to it. I almost wish that you had to turn the page in this for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's like, he looks at her T-shirt, and he's like, because she thinks that like the American government is fascist, and he also hates the American government but for a completely different way, where like he wants it to go back to what he feels like is like the right people in charge. He wants Christian law, and he thinks that the KKK did some pretty good things and stuff like that. And she sees America as all the things that he likes about them is everything that she hates about them, and she sees the government as Nazis. But she says, but he looks at her flag and says, "Is that how you see America?" And I'm like, a flag? Like I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't realize it was a swastika until I looked at this, because it's much more clearly a swastika.
It's really funny. I read it panel to panel, so it was like a giant panel, so I had no issue with that.
Oh, okay. No, I read it like this, and it was kind of dark on my screen, and I was like, I don't know what the problem is. I should have zoomed in on that panel. I didn't know what he was talking about. God, that's gruesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, I think all of that really works in this. There's not any gratuitous violence at all. It all hits you upside the head in exactly the right way, where you're just like, oh God, like nothing is. You say it's cool, but like none of that was fun to me. I was very impressed with the way
Demi Lovato. It was crazy.
I was very impressed with the way violence was handled in this, I guess is what I'm saying. And it has, somebody mentioned earlier, it's got a mature rating on the front, but it wasn't in the Max line. Is this just around when Max starts? Because I want to say Punisher Max is like 04 when it starts, maybe?
I'm so bad with dates, I have no idea.
I think that's already begun by now, but that is kind of a question. I guess it's because, well, I was going to say it's because it's in continuity, but there was some Max that was too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Haven't we talked about
there
this?
was.
Yeah. So
Max
I'm not.
Alias is.
I'm not actually really sure why it's not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess this is around the time when we were doing the Marvel Knights stuff, because it's got that logo, at least on your DVD.
Right.
I noticed on the picture.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, when I read this, I was thinking, oh, this would fit great in Marvel Knights, except I think it's even a little bit more violent than some of that stuff was. But I got to go back to Bendis' Daredevil because I never finished it. It might have some real rough stuff in it that I don't know about.
Chewbacca's Lover says Max is 2001. No, of course
Even
it
earlier.
is, because Alias and Daredevil and Ultimate Spider-Man are all like around the same time.
Oh, and also...
So no, of course.
And also, is the 04 movie looking at anything from Max?
What? The
Punisher
movie? Well, no, because it's...
Because I know Warzone is.
It's mostly looking at Welcome Back Frank, which I think is before Max, but...
I thought Welcome Back Frank was in Max, is it not?
I didn't think it was, but
that's better than I do. But
Frank, yeah.
I thought that was toward the beginning of that, but maybe it's not.
It's like its own miniseries.
But anyway, I think Marvel Knights was also a line of these. Like I think, or of some animated Marvel movies, if I'm not mistaken. And even though this was a motion comic, they also put it under that umbrella, but I could be wrong about that. It's been too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows?
Oh, Chewbacca's Lover says Punisher Max is 2004. I nailed that date. But he says Max's line starts in 01.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
I'm just so bad at dates. This is why I would fail in history class.
Yeah. It's the only thing that keeps me sane, because I can kind of create a timeline in my brain of when things happen.
It's like you're taking your history test, and they're like, okay, when did Superman 3 come out? And I'm like, 1971. I don't know.
I'm only good at it with stuff I really care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because having the events in order is important to me. So that helps do that. It gives me signposts for my own life, too. Like, I remember events of my own life better because I know when certain superhero movies came out. So I can be like, oh yeah, I did this particular thing in this year because I remember Dark Knight came out that year, and here's all the things I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
Like getting married. I would remember that anyway, but...
Yeah, and I was doing things like playing hopscotch on the playground when Dark Knight came out.
You would have been like 11, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't judge me. I liked hopscotch at 11.
Yeah, hopscotch is fun. Leave me alone.
So we're more or less in agreement on the villain. It sounds like. In some ways, he's the weakest thing in
Well, that's why I
this.
said earlier, like if you were to make this a movie, you would. That's the first thing you change, right?
Yep.
Because
I
he's
like.
the weakest part of
I
it.
love this cover.
Oh yeah,
I
I mean all the covers are great.
and the biggest reason, I mean, like his art is great. I told you earlier off camera that I didn't think I would care for this art as much out of context, but it was really right for this. The more I'm looking at it, the more I like it. I think I like the pencils, or the, well, I can't say pencils. It's painted, but I mean, like, I think I like the character models and the action and stuff a little bit better than I like the way it's colored.
Oh,
Like
okay,
it's
interesting. Like, is
going,
it too dark, maybe?
yeah, it's going for an intentional muted thing to be more serious and more like a modern action movie and that kind of thing, and it works. It's just not like as much to my taste if I'm just looking at art, where I'd want it to be a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to see. But then it's perfect for the material, But anyway, the reason I love this cover is because until you get to the last issue, more and more, Tony and Maya are feeling like a real potential couple.
Yeah, no, she could have just been the new love interest after this.
And
Like,
I'm
it
so
definitely feels like it could play that way.
I'm so blindsided when she turns out to be that was a really satisfying revelation.
Mhm.
Like, I loved everything about that. I never saw it coming. I never saw that coming.
They should have recreated that, and then he could have like unibeamed her head off in a very violent fashion.
Okay, is Yinsen in the original Origin, or is he created specifically for this? I want to say he goes all the way back that far, right?
Yeah, no, he goes all the way back.
Is he an Asian man originally?
Yeah.
Okay, and so then he's changed to be a Middle Eastern guy in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure why they did that, because that doesn't even sound like a Middle Eastern name, but all right.
Well, because the original Origin's in Vietnam, right? So it's
Is it?
you have Yinsen there, yeah.
Of course
Yeah,
it
because
is.
you have
They should have changed his name, probably, right? But then for this, they've updated the Origin. Am I remembering this right? Haven't they updated it so that now it's in Afghanistan?
Yeah, that was a big thing with this.
We haven't talked about the obligatory, look how post 9/11 this is, but like this is one of the most blatantly post 9/11 things you and I have ever looked at. Both in the history stuff, just where we are in the world right then. It's dealing with terrorism and that that kind of terrorism. It's both domestic and foreign, but it's also in the technology. We are terrified of how rapidly things are changing.
Well, I think because we're right in that period, at Marvel where we're doing more of like villains or terrorists, and they're not wearing colorful costumes anymore. Where you just have a guy in a leather jacket, which definitely became more of a thing in this period.
I'm sorry, I was distracted by this comment. Dan Schneider said, "Why is that hot chick fondling Iron Man's armor? Because she doesn't want him to know that she created the villain." that helps get him off the scent on that.
Which is why Guy Pearce should have done that to Tony in Iron Man 3, and then he wouldn't have suspected the Mandarin.
How do you feel about this as an update? Because I think it's wonderfully sophisticated. I mean, of an Origin update. I just love the way the Origin is built into the story overall with this.
No, and I think it captures, what works about Iron Man's origin. Like, it's less Twilight Zone-y than the original issue is, but I mean, you're always going to have that when you're doing like a more serialized Iron Man. Because weirdly, the movie is like kind of a mix between the original Origin and this. Because it's also got like the guy who runs the camp is like the kind of face of the bad guys during that. While this doesn't really have anything like that, it's just kind of faceless terrorists.
Yeah, and the point of it for Tony's character arc in each story seems almost opposite. Am I right about that? I mean, in the movie, it's a really satisfying, like, cinematic movie sort of story, especially if you didn't get any more movies, of course, where he's got to find his heart. I always talk about the heart motif in those movies by ironically, almost physically losing his heart. He has to discover that he actually has compassion, cares about people, stops ignoring what his weapons are doing to people. And in this, it's he kind of doubles down on what his strategy has been for building weapons because this kind of justifies it for him. It says, I don't really have any other kind of choice. I have to make the weapon to save myself and to save other people. Mm-hmm. And he goes in saying, I've always cared about people. I want to develop this technology to make people better, and I don't know how to do it without the potential for bad things happening when the wrong people get a hold of my technology, including maybe the government that I have to make it for in order to get my money in the first place. And I like what he says about like stealing money from the military to do what he really wants to do with it. Mm-hmm. He's almost like a technological Robin Hood or something.
Well, I guess that is one of the bigger changes in this retelling of the origin, is that Iron Man as an idea pre-exists his origin.
Yeah, I really liked that update.
Yeah, I'm not...
Where it's like, I guess I gotta do it now.
But yeah.
No, in at least just the context of this story, I dug that a lot, because again, it's such an encapsulation of the big ethical dilemma he's been dealing with the whole story. And I love the idea that he's been tortured by it going all the way back to his origin. And like Iron Man has been the answer to this problem all along. And it was always the end game. And he's forced to make it the start. And he builds it to be this futuristic thing to aspire to. And then what's torturing him now is not only, I don't know if I'm making weapons or creating a hero, but also I'm being left in the dust now too. Like I can't even keep up. It's that fear that we really I mean, that resonated with me a lot, that we really had in the mid 2000s, and I think a lot of us still kind of do, of just the fear of technology, the future passing us by. Things are changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's becoming a ghost of the 20th century.
Oh, I love that whole thing.
Yeah, it's the best scene in the book, I think.
We haven't talked about that, and maybe I can bring the panels back up here. But yeah, would you talk about that for a minute? Because you and I both loved that scene.
Yeah, so at the beginning of this book, Tony meets with an interviewer for like a documentary. He's kind of, I get the sense, like a Michael Moore type documentary director.
Yeah.
And so he's talking to Tony, and it's very much like a gotcha interview, right? Where it's like, will you do this weapon thing? Yeah, but you do this. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of an interview.
Yeah, and he's not giving Tony, like, Tony is surprisingly sympathetic through that interview, because the guy has a lot of points where it's like, we'll break this down a little bit. Well, you shot all these landmines overseas that kids are finding now, and it's killing them. How do you justify that? But Tony's, every time he brings up an example like that, Tony's not given any chance to explain anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's a bad interviewer in that it's not about getting answers, it's just about kind of pointing the finger.
It's about exposing him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, he's bringing out the idea that Tony doesn't really do anything to change the world. He's made it a worse place. And then there's a really great moment at the end where Tony asks him if, he's made any actual change to the world with all of his, like, exposure documentaries.
That only intellectuals and critics are reading or watching. Like,
yeah, he's got the line where it's
what have you done for the world either?
It's something like you have like zero presence in like the mainstream. It's something along those lines. It's not exactly that, but that was a great line too.
Well, and what I like about it is Tony is kind of afraid that the interviewer is right and that he's actually doing the same thing but worse, because like all this guy is doing is making movies and exposing things to not too many people, and he is Tony says he's a ghost too, right?
Hmm.
That like, nobody's really paying attention to him, but he's not making anything worse.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it's like having zero presence versus a possible negative one.
the big again ethical conundrum that Tony is dealing with is undeniably, indisputably, he is enacting some good change. If not overall, there are individual people he's saving as Iron Man when he goes with the Avengers, etc., etc. But is it worth the mines that blow up children? Is it worth the half a mile long gun he apparently built to lob missiles 400 miles away, like all of that? Is it worth all of that? I get to the end of the book, and again, when Maya right at the end says, I'm not any worse than you are. I do the same thing you do. It's ends justify the means. At the end of the day, we're going to all be glad that I tested this with a terrorist because maybe I can cure cancer, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And I closed the book with a big question mark, which is both a frustrating and a great feeling because the book did what it was meant to. It's this very gray area, morally ambiguous thing where it's like, boy, you're made uncomfortable in the right way because at least me, I'm sitting here, reading this, going, I don't fully know what the right answer is, and it's hard not to say you want to wait and see what happens, and then when you say that, you are basically condoning in ends justifies the means kind of philosophy, because you're saying, well, if years from now she does cure cancer, then maybe that was worth it. Oh, was it also worth the Nazi scientists doing experiments on prisoners and all of that if we get the right medicines and things from it? No, of course not, but then also sometimes it's hard not to feel like I'm glad we have those things, right? So oh boy, you can't feel good at the end of this book.
Hmm. Well, I just like Tony's response to it when she says, I'm doing the exact same thing as you. Like, what's the difference between us? And he goes, well, I'm trying to make a change. Like,
Well, that's the thing is, I do feel like there. Don't get me wrong. I do feel like there's a difference. I do feel
mhm,
like because he's. It's about attitude, right? It's like I want to be better and you don't. Um, and so I feel like he's better than her, but I find it difficult to articulate why, and that makes me wonder if I'm right about it.
well, and then obviously
Do you
there's
know
a
what I mean?
question of, um, is he really better if he knows that what he's doing is wrong, but still does it, even though, he doesn't want to and
Yeah,
knows that it's wrong?
but he wouldn't be able to develop any of this stuff if he didn't do it that way. So then the question is, should he just not do anything? Is he a better person if he lays down and just lets the world unfold the way it's going to unfold?
Hmm.
And you don't really want to condone that either. So I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
and of course, it's the beginning of a story in a way, so there's more of that to explore after this, I'm sure.
Hmm.
But this as a standalone piece, does it? It doesn't read cynical, but it doesn't read uh uplifting at the end. It really makes you think about stuff.
I feel like this ultimately reads as,
I do feel like Tony's doing the best he can. I can't help but feel that by the end, even though
mhm.
she has a bit of a point, but she does seem too extreme. Hence Extremis.
No, I feel like it ultimately reads as very like optimistically cynical, if that makes sense. Where,
It kind of does, yeah.
yeah, we're like, it's a cynical world we live in, but maybe, you know.
You
Uh,
certainly can't say again when she says, I'm the same as you. I'm like, you have a point up to a point that there are things Tony's doing that I wish he didn't have to do or that I don't know if I agree with. But that statement on face value is not true. They are
mhm.
not the same.
Yeah,
Partly
no,
because
exactly.
everything he, or at least a lot of what he does is to himself. I mean, he is making weapons and giving it to other people, and they're doing what they do with it. There's that.
Hmm.
But that's a little bit different than going to a criminal and giving him superpowers. I don't know. It is different.
Yeah, somebody that's gonna breathe fire onto the president.
And it's maybe different, even though obviously people in charge, there is corruption, people in charge don't always make the moral decision or whatever, but there is maybe something a little bit different than, I mean, I'm hesitating because people at the top can do crimes, of course, but like all things being equal, a president in a war making a choice like we have to bomb Japan during World War II, in order to try to end this war and make a statement about the bomb, because she brings the bomb up at the end. That's why I'm mentioning this, and I love that line when she's like, you drop the atomic bomb so that you never have to drop it again. And I'm like, there's a difference between a president doing that and you in a conspiracy behind the scenes that nobody knows about, covertly making that decision for all of us. I mean, okay, there's a difference there.
Yeah, justifying her beliefs a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably spent too long breaking all that down, but
it's okay.
That was all very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it made me think. I love these kind of moral quagmires, and I always want to put an emphasis on these kinds of political stories that really work for me, both as fantasy and things that make me think a little bit. Where it's like, there, like I said earlier, there are a couple of places where I feel like Ellis's politics are maybe in my face a tad, but overall, there's some, pretty decent, like, allegories, even if they're sort of thinly veiled, for things that are going on in the real world, where it doesn't feel like we're taking exactly the real world and throwing it into this book, but it's very realistic all at the same time. So, like, it has enough of a tinge of escapism where I'm appreciating it on both levels. Like, I'm still enjoying it as a superhero comic book at the same time as I'm enjoying it as, political thriller, satire, or however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with like the crazy like right-wing villain guy, I think what helps it not feel like too crazy is that I think Tony Stark himself is more on like right-wing, but it's not like we get like a ton of that in this. But I mean, you can read that into him being like a rich weapons developer.
Yeah, he read, I don't want to say apolitical, but like politically ambiguous to me, where I couldn't 100% really tell what his politics would be.
I've always this is obviously just background with the character, but I've always seen Tony as more right wing.
The movies don't play him that way.
No, but I mean the movies don't really get into like any of that stuff.
Well, I mean there's occasionally a line about it. You have that thing at the beginning of 2 of like where he's like, I don't care about the liberal agenda anymore. That kind of hit me sideways, where I was like, oh, that's a thing you cared about? Okay.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, he says that.
Which is then weird that he's got like a Obama Iron Man poster.
Well, I think that's like partly why they did that, where it's
I see. Okay, so it's around that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I shouldn't remember that line.
Well, and again, not to go off the rails, but I've always thought that poster is really weird because in his very next movie, we have a fictional president where we make it kind of clear that Obama could not have been president in that universe. So I don't know what that poster was, because in universe it was not a version of that poster, because it couldn't have been.
Yeah, whatever.
I just think it's funny.
The worst thing like that is in Jessica Jones season 2, and they keep quoting the "great power, great responsibility" line. And
yeah, that's
like,
bad.
Where'd you get this? Yeah.
Where did you even get this?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I've been prattling on about this for too long. Austin, anything else you want to make sure we bring up about this?
We just got another super chat.
I'm sure we. Oh, thank you. I'm sure we missed something important.
Yes, I'm like, I don't want to say no because maybe, but there's nothing that's coming to mind.
Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. Everybody's bringing up Eric because this is an Iron Man thing. Eric has always said Iron Man is conservative in the same way Green Arrow is liberal, or because it's Ellis, with both having a lot of the same traits and character flaws.
Well, I think that just goes back to Iron Man's creation, where Iron Man, I think some of this is maybe Stanley kind of, changing things as time went on, maybe. I don't entirely know, but he always said the thing with Iron Man was that he made someone, that was like a rich arms dealer guy that people wouldn't like the kids that were reading the magazines as they call them, wouldn't like this character, and you make them like them. Um, so like I think there is just that in his inception.
Yeah, well, and I hesitate because, again, I'm not real familiar with comic book Iron Man overall, except for in some team things here and there. So it's just a character I've never really thought that much about his politics. I've thought more about like his like morality and overall worldview, and you can maybe you can look at his worldview and assume maybe a particular kind of politics, but I think I'm just more used to like movie modern Iron Man, who I've always thought of as more liberal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. And then we maybe push it a little too far when we hit Civil War, like in the comics. I mean,
Yeah,
when he becomes the face of the government, becomes the face of the Bush government.
yeah, because in the movie, his Civil War, obviously he's pushing for a government legislation, but it doesn't feel like really a conservative one.
Mm-hmm.
To me, anyway.
Well, I think part of that is just that I don't think the movies want to get into like anything too divisive, especially like maybe a little bit more so now, I guess,
Yeah.
but even then.
Well, I mean, you look at him in the movies, he is starting to get, by Ultron and then in Civil War, on the side uh, putting, sorry, I'm distracted by comments.
Well, he almost becomes by like Ultron, like he's like Kingdom Come Batman, where he wants to put like drones like everywhere.
Yeah, and he's trying to act kind of altruistic about it, where it's like it's not about him controlling everything, but like yeah, it sort of is though.
Mm-hmm.
It seems less paranoid than Batman, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. But I was just gonna say, like the freedom versus security thing, where he's kind of on the side at that point of security over freedom, and then which part of the political spectrum does that fall on? It's a question.
Because obviously it's taking that element from the books, and the books are very much a criticism of the Patriot Act under Bush. So obviously, like we've moved away from that period, but like those remnants are still there.
Chewbacca's Lover put in another $5 super chat. I don't have Eric here to talk about his opinions, so I kind of want to get away from that. But he says a big thing from Eric was how Iron Man could never be right wing now, even he has traditionally always been right wing. See, I agree with that, and that's he really doesn't read like he possibly could be now in the stuff I've looked at. And so I haven't read earlier Iron Man. Green Arrow, I have it like drilled in my brain that he is the liberal rich guy because he was kind of conceptualized that way by the 70s.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean that was kind of part of his character.
The premise of that character, yeah.
No, exactly.
I'll get away from the political thing, but there's no way not to talk about it. Dagon Spear, but I'll just read this comment real quick. He says, I've actually always felt it was kind of liberal in the comic idea and movie for Civil War. The idea of trying to control how people act has always felt like an extreme liberal idea to me. I'm not going to speak to that too much, but but again, with the security over freedom thing, where like that's more important. And like the idea of bigger government, more regulations, that kind of thing is kind of classically more of a liberal notion. And Captain America in those movies seems kind of classically conservative. They don't get real hard, obviously, into the political side of it, but like he's clearly Christian, he's clearly religious, he's clearly got very old school values. So you either have two conservatives on different sides if Iron Man in the movies is conservative, or you have a liberal and a conservative, and I'm pretty sure that's what you have.
Yeah, and I mean,
right? I'm pretty sure Tony in the movies has to be a liberal guy.
I would say in the movies probably more so, but in the comics, but who knows? They're so just not willing to go there. Yeah, and in terms of the controlling thing, I mean, it's a pendulum.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and what those words mean seems to change to people every few years to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes in cycles. It's like anything.
Absolutely.
You'll have periods where there's more right-wing people in power, and then the kind of counterculture, I want to do my own thing, becomes more liberal, and then back and forth is what it is.
Well, anyway, are we about there, or is there anything else you want to mention real quick?
I done liked it when Iron Man blew that guy's head off.
Dude, again, watch this if you can get your hands on it, because the part where at the end, it's really cool to see it animated, but it's kind of chilling. When he is
looks really
he's so angry with Malin for having to kill him that he kicks his disembodied body and the blood splurts up from it.
Well, what I love about it, because when Malin kills that girl, I made the joke that it's the Sub-Zero
I've never seen
fatality.
that. I've never seen a man get so upset with someone for making him kill him that he that he like takes his head off and then kicks his body.
But then when Iron Man kills Malin, it's like a modern fatality where he like blows his heart out and then he falls down and he blows his head up and then he kicks him.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's awesome. I love it.
But again, it doesn't read gratuitous to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, definitely.
It kind of hurts my feelings because it hurts his feelings. In some ways, I'm finding this Iron Man more sympathetic. Like, I'm relating to him in some ways more than I do the movie version.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
He's still a deeply flawed character.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how hard he's trying from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like a more complex, well-rounded person, more thoughtful person at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of the movie thing of we kind of took back some of the layers for a lot of the characters, right?
Well, you simplify it
exactly.
to tell a 3-act story. No, it's not. And he is ever evolving throughout those movies. So if he was simplified a bit and changed a bit to give him a clear character arc, he is constantly changing. I mean, in some ways, it's not straight up opposite, but this feels like an almost more Batman kind of idea, in that he is way conflicted and more conflicted maybe than Batman. But I mean, what is his arc in this? He's kind of refusing to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've just always seen Tony Stark as, and I said this to you earlier because you texted me and said, the Batman thing, and I said Tony Stark's kind of like the Batman who didn't perfect himself in training and is just always trying to strive to get there.
Yeah,
and that's kind of just how I see Tony Stark, because it's always about moving forward to the next, improvement.
Oh, a couple more things you and I talked about off camera I wanted to make sure and bring up in the video. One of them is that bit when he's about to get Extremis injected in him, and we still think that Maya's on his side, and he he tells her, oh, you know what we could do? We could set up Extremis so that we could sell, because there's this whole kind of side thing in this book about how we only, and I liked this idea a lot. I like that he explored this, that we're only progressing technology in order to sell things. And he goes, you know what we could do? We could make like a brain TV. And
Oh yeah.
and immediately I went, oh, so he wants to make the Riddler device from Batman Forever. And I know he's joking, but I kind of wanted to see him do that. And then the other thing I thought of while I was talking to Austin earlier was Extremis would have been a really good way to do an alternate version in something like Ultimate. You mentioned Ultimate when we talked about this, and I had thought about that
Yeah,
too.
because you described this, and I was like, this is just what Ultimate would have been if Extremis was.
If it had already existed.
If it had been out yet.
Yeah, well, and as we know, Extremis is malleable and can be anything. It can do anything, right? So what you do is you inject someone with Extremis, and it goes wrong, and it turns that person into what is essentially a Venom symbiote. And then that person that is now a symbiote goes and gets a host. And so you'd have this very different version of Venom where it's two people in the first place. Like, it starts off as a human being. And I guess Ultimate's Carnage kind of did that.
Oh, and wait a minute. Sorry. You meant that, like, the symbiote itself would be, like, a person?
Yeah!
Oh, that's not at all what I thought you meant. I thought you meant just, like...
Isn't that a cool idea, though?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But, like it could do that.
What I thought you meant was just, like, you get injected with Extremis and it, like, makes you Venom. Kind of like how he, like, the suit comes out of him. Like, it's, like... You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but it wouldn't be Venom because Venom has to have a symbiote.
Yeah. I mean, Ultimate changed a lot of stuff. But that's what I thought you meant. That's even crazier.
Yeah.
But why? So I become black goo.
Why not, though? I mean, if you can make it to where it gives you an Iron Man suit, why couldn't it accidentally transform you into a suit?
Well, now that I'm thinking that, like, it would be the part where they're, like, throwing up blood. He would just, like, puke out all that black sludge, and then the body would die. And they'd be like, oh, he's dead, but he's actually the black sludge.
So the thing that made me think of it is the logo, the moving logo at the beginning of the motion comic, every time puts up the Iron Man logo, and then Extremis shows up in what looks like black goo, like a Venom symbiote. And that's what made me think of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting.
Chewbacca's Lover put in a $2 super chat and says, does this make you want an R-rated Iron Man movie? Not necessarily R-rated. I still think that you could adapt this PG-13. It just might not appeal that much to children, but, you know, you could do it R, whatever. It made me want this adapted more straight. Even though I like Iron Man 3, and it doesn't even make me want this instead of Iron Man 3. I don't guess. I don't know. But I'm just, in an alternate reality, I would have just loved to have seen what this looks like on the big screen, because I think you could about adapt it. Except, like Austin said a couple times, you probably want to make Malin a more like a screen-worthy looking bad guy with probably a costume.
Yeah, make him like the Living Laser or something, like a little bit more interesting. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want an R-rated Iron Man movie. Like, I wouldn't be against it if it was good. I also
on video. I mean, maybe an animated R-rated movie.
Yeah, I also, like, in terms of just like Iron Man movies, I feel like Iron Man 3 is good enough. I don't need another Extremis movie. But again, if it was done well, you know, I'd be open to it. But there's lots of Iron Man things I would want adapted before that.
Chewbacca's Lover, is there an alternate reality where Iron Man is an R-rated franchise like Terminator or Aliens? I would think that there are about 15 other Marvel characters that you would start in a rated R place before Iron Man, like Ghost Rider, Daredevil, etc., etc. Iron Man has too much toy potential is the problem. And obviously Terminator and Alien both had a lot of toy potential, but, like, those are just more violent concepts in the first place, so the filmmakers luckily got to make them, you know, the way they wanted to, except for some sequels. But with this, But with Iron Man, I just feel like there's too much clear like kid toy potential. And also, it doesn't really start in that place. I mean, like, it was a comic book kids were reading in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Daredevil changes, but Daredevil wasn't popular early on. I mean, that's kind of the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I don't think a lot of these characters need to be R-rated.
Plushy DX says, I figured
Spider-Man's
somebody would bring
definitely
this
there.
up. He says Cameron was going to make an R-rated Spidey. We can go back to things that have been conceptualized that way. Personally, I don't think that ever would have actually happened. Like, somewhere in the production of that, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think a studio gets cold feet and says, "Well, wait, there's kids that are going to want to see this movie. We're gonna have to change to PG-13." I don't think that ever would, just because somebody has a script that is an R-rated script, or you have a
And not even a full script. He had a treatment.
yeah, or a big well, and also keep in mind, it's not like that ever went into pre-production or anything. Like. He had a treatment. He pitched it. He tried to get it made. It didn't get made. Like, I don't think that even if he had gotten to make it, it would have never been rated R.
That's always my assumption, is that somewhere along the line,
in my opinion,
an Avi Arad would have come along and been like, PG-13.
well, we couldn't even get Spawn R rated,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 6-7 years after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Right? This was early '90s, was it not?
Yes. I think so. It's somewhere in the 90s.
But yeah, not to shut down anybody's argument, but I just feel like there is a big difference between somebody was trying to get a thing made and this thing almost got made. I don't know how close Cameron really got to making that movie. Am I wrong about that? And again, even if it had gotten made, I think that script would have. Keep in mind how often scripts get changed 32 to 47 times by
Well, even if it
different
was
people we bring in.
R-rated, yeah, like I don't even know if his movie would be exactly what that treatment is.
No, Deaniverse, I know Spawn is 97. I'm saying when Cameron pitched that, I think it was early 90s. That Spider-Man movie, was it not?
Yeah, I think it's earlier mid-90s.
And Senior Stick says Spawn is R-rated. Nah, sort of. They made an R-rated cut because a lot of we just talked about this when we did a commentary last week, but that movie had a bunch of stuff taken out of it that really shouldn't have forced it into an R place in the first place. So even when you see the version they wanted to release, it is not an R-rated movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You'll look at that movie and you'll go, why though? Even in '97, even if you watched it when it came out, because I did, and I was like 13. I'm looking at that going, I don't understand why anything was taken out of this movie for PG-13.
Mm-hmm. Although I'm thinking about like this '90s period. I think maybe like he's been attached to a few Marvel characters at this point, but I think maybe Iron Man was one of the ones Tarantino talked about doing something with, but I could be wrong. I know he had Luke Cage and I think Silver Surfer.
Really?
But I think I'm trying to remember going through his like unrealized projects, but I think maybe Iron Man was on there.
Well, the Daniverse, this wasn't even the MPAA as much as it was the studio, as far as what things were taken out of Spawn.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Senior Sticks, I'm not sure what point you're making. He's just listing a bunch of comic book movies that are R-rated. Yes, we've had R-rated comic book movies.
Well, and Venom's not R, but Blade is.
No, it's not. But yeah, again, a lot of it is toy potential and history of characters that have traditionally been kids' properties. Iron Man, along with a lot of that Marvel staple, going back to the '60s, even in cartoons, even on television, there's too much potential to get kids in seats and sell toys too.
So I just looked.
Blade
it up
was
when
an
you were saying
unknown.
that. And Tarantino was linked to an Iron Man movie in '99. I
Okay,
thought that was one of them.
that makes sense to me, and that could have been the big outlier where you actually got a rated R thing. But also keep in mind, Iron Man at that point wasn't, super popular. So if Tarantino really wanted to make that and pitched it as R-rated, I could have seen maybe that being an exception where somebody would have allowed him to do that. But it would have to be the right guy wanting to make it for a particular audience. If it's the studio goes, we're going to make Iron Man or we're going to make Spider-Man, and Spider-Man in particular, I don't see that ever being R-rated. No matter who
Like,
came along to do
I
it.
imagine
But
his
Tarantino with
cave-
Silver Surfer, I don't even understand that. Do you see Tarantino doing cosmic anything?
It would be interesting. I don't know what that would look like. I just imagine Samuel L. Jackson as the voice of Galactus, and there you go.
Wow.
Be awesome.
Anyway, I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, like, I imagine his Luke Cage would have been R-rated because he's obscure enough that you wouldn't necessarily be thinking Marvel. And the big thing he liked about Luke Cage was the blaxploitation '70s stuff.
I was gonna say he would have done a really sophisticated blaxploitation movie, where it probably would have been like making fun of those kinds of movies while telling a like really character driven story somehow. Like it would have been both. It would have been like parody and satire and made you think all at the same time. And that's not a thing that appeals to kids at all. So you might as well make that R.
Yeah, exactly.
His Luke Cage would have had like nude scenes and everything, right?
His Luke Cage would have had a certain word be said a billion
times. Yeah, that too. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke Cage also would have beheaded a man and then kicked his body, his corpse, his bleeding corpse.
Oh my god, okay. If Tarantino's Luke Cage was just the issue of Luke Cage where Dr. Doom hires him to take out the Doombots, and then Luke Cage like follows him back to Latveria because Dr. Doom refused to pay him his like $100. That would have been the greatest movie of all time.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and bid you guys farewell. Once again, went a lot longer than I thought we would. People were chatting with us at the end. Thanks for all of the interaction, folks, and thanks to the Super Chatters for the support. Appreciate you guys. So next week, we're going to do a movie that MattBat68 asked for on Patreon, and he wants us to watch Silverado.
Okay, that sounds familiar, but I'm also not picking it up immediately.
Silverado is a movie from 1985 with, assuming, well, there's another one from 14. So
I imagine probably the older one, I would think.
Wait, no, sorry, it's not 14. I'm just looking at a review somebody wrote in 14 of said movie. So this must be the one he wants, because I'm not seeing a remake or anything. I'm going to assume that this is what he wants. It's Kevin Costner, Kevin Kline, and Danny Glover. It's a modern Western film.
Oh, okay, see, I think that's why it sounded familiar, because that's exactly what I was thinking was a Western.
Yeah, I just didn't know it was a modern, or at least, modern for that. Like, I didn't realize it was a later Western. That's exciting. Assuming this is actually the movie he wants us to do, just because I love that cast. Like, John Cleese is in this. Goldblum is in this.
Oh yeah, just everyone.
Oh boy,
okay.
I'm excited. This could be great.
Very cool.
This sounds awesome. I'll probably watch this with my wife. I bet she'd enjoy that. So that's what we're doing next time. I'm excited about that. I usually don't look that far into a thing, but I saw it was 85 and I got really curious about the cast list. Anyway, once again, appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching live or after the fact. And if you want to make a request yourself, you go to patreon.com/geekvolution and go to the $15 tier. You only have to be on that tier for 1 month. Let your pledge roll over and you'll get in the request list. Got about a 4 to 5 month wait right now. Still lots of folks on the tier, and we really appreciate you guys for doing that. You can ask for a comic arc or a graphic novel or anything like that for comics. 4, 5, 6 issues. We're trying to do fewer 12. if we can, if you can find something a little bit shorter than that, we appreciate it. And you can ask for a movie or a pilot for a TV show. And if it is a more R-rated type pilot, Austin and I will do it. And otherwise, Jason and I can do it on the pilot show, which should let us get through a few more of these a little bit more often if people ask for more TV pilots.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, Cat Logan Show
correct.
tomorrow night, Friday. Austin and I are we've actually changed up our plan for Friday. We're gonna switch movies from this week to next week for just personal reasons on my end. So this week we're gonna watch The Exorcist. So join us for that on Friday. I've never seen that movie. I'm gonna watch it ahead of time. I got to do that tonight or tomorrow.
It's wonderful. I'm excited to see what you think about that.
Well, Teddy, this is why I don't take books anymore, and I can't make Austin read a book. He's in college. He's got too much reading to do already. Teddy said, "Watch someone recommend you the entire Bible."
Oh God.
I mean, even if I was doing books, I wouldn't review the whole Bible. And what would I do with any part of the Bible? I'd like you to review Leviticus. Can you imagine just that in a title for a video? Leviticus review, the ReQuest.
You should just do a video called Cap Can't Read the Bible, and it'll just be you with a bonfire burning copies of the Bible, because I'm sure people would love that.
Oh, that seems like a great idea. It's, you know what? Controversy sells.
But it's like they always say, sex and controversy sells. So if you can...
You're going to integrate those two things?
Yeah, no, if you can have like a Coca-Cola commercial that has Nixon Watergating sex, then, you have a great commercial.
I'm imagining all these titles now, like Second Kings Review, Deuteronomy Review. Anyway, appreciate you guys. I mean, Revelations would be an entertaining review.
That'd be something, yeah.
Yeah. Or any of those, like, missing books, that didn't make the cut.
You should review the, other Bibles, like, from other religions, too, like the Scientology one and, the Mormon one.
Yeah, or the Anarchist Handbook.
Oh, yeah, the copy that, every, 13-year-old has.
Even still, is that Mein Kampf review?
Oh, so
we probably shouldn't do that. I mean, these things are available. Anybody can read them.
That was banned in Canada until 3 years ago.
Is that right?
Yeah, because my dad and I were talking about it, and he was like, "That would be an interesting read historically." So I bought it for him for his birthday the year that it was unbanned, and I went to his house, and he's got this giant, it's a really nice bookshelf. It's got a ladder on it. It's so cool. And I was like, oh, one of these books is flipped, so the spine's inside. That's weird. What is this? Oh, that's why.
Okay, we're gonna get going now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sure appreciate you. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Yeah, bye, everybody.
See you later, folks.